Let's go camping. Lights out and safety on. Hey, ScouterStan. Let's talk a little bit about camping safety. Now, there's a lot of different things, but I just want to touch on some of the things that Mike and I were talking about all of the different facets of the neat things that have to happen to make sure that we have a safe and fun camping trip. Now, the camping trip can be for any unit, whether it be a Cub Scout pack, a Scouts BSA troop, a venture crew. It could even be for Sea Scout ship. They could do camping, totally okay. They have nights on board, which are a little bit different. But Sea Scouts do these things too. So keep all of that in mind. This is a video for all unit types with they go camping. First off, you need to think about your pre-trip planning. Now, for a Cub Scout, this is usually done in a committee meeting. It is done in adults. They make the plans as far as what they're going to be doing, where it's completely different with Scouts BSA. When you're dealing with a troop, the troop decides its calendar, decides where they're going to go, what they're going to do, and then the committee approves it or doesn't. So, that's a whole nother video. But anyways, this is important to know all of the pre-trip stuff. Crews are the same way, Sea Scout same way. So it's important to know the difference between all of those things. You have to think about the hazards. If you're going to be going someplace that would be hazardous for a Cub Scout, that would be perfectly fine for somebody in a troop. You got to keep that in mind. You have to stay within your age appropriateness. So you have to think about your hazards. So that's something to consider for pre-trip planning. Next up would be proper equipment. You got to make sure that if you're going to go camping that you have enough tents and to stay within the guidelines of YPT. So that is very important. YPT is Youth Protection Training. Every scout leader does that, and we have to make sure that we have enough tents to be compliant. Now, as far as personal gear, that like sleeping bags and blankets and pillows and stuff, that's up to the individual. But for the unit, what the unit's going to cover, that needs to be planned on. That your quartermaster or the parents that are actually in charge of that. A lot of packs will actually do trunk camping, where they literally have the car there and they put everything in and out, and they provide their own equipment. So it's a little bit easier to work with. But with a troop or a crew, and likewise, it's important that the equipment is appropriate and is available and is in a quantity where you stay within the guidelines. Now, you also want to make sure for weather conditions. So that's another thing that may be a part of that equipment. Next big thing is fire safety. With Cub Scouts, because they're doing family camping, and as a Cub Scout pack, they only do one night. With that, usually there's a program for a big campfire, and everybody gets their marshmallows and throw something. They do that in troops too, and in crews. You got to think of the safety factors. You have to also keep in mind what the camping facilities that you're in. If you're in a campsite that's provided, there's usually a campfire ring, and you got to keep that. You can't just use the lumber that's all over the woods. That's not a good thing. That leaves a trace. So bring your own wood. Make sure you have fire equipment there in case it gets out of control, and make sure that you can put it out. That's so important. That is a very big consideration. You also need to make sure that if you're in a troop situation, that you have people there that have been trained on how to handle a campfire, how to build a campfire, how to start it, and how to put it out. So those are skills that are often taught from tenderfoot all the way to first class. So those are basic skills that they need, but they have to do it safely. And that's that is a critical part of being prepared and being able to do it. Another thing about camping is food safety. We got to make sure that all of the things, all of our spoilables are kept either refrigerated or in coolers with ice. That is super important to keep those things from spoiling or start to contaminate other things. So using Ziploc bags and ice and different things, you can kind of manage all of that. And you got to make sure that dry goods aren't mixed in with things that are wet. That could be bad. So you have to keep that in play when you're doing the food. When you're the chef for the camp out or for the patrol, that is so important that you keep things healthy. There's a lot of little sayings like, when in doubt, throw it out. Well, sometimes if you're in doubt, you may not be a good idea to eat it. So you got to think about those things. But if you keep it refrigerated, you keep everything in the safe zone, then you'll have no problems whatsoever. Now, the only problem you might have is animals. Now, where I live, we have raccoons and bears. They just love to visit your camp at night. And if they find anything that's edible, they'll eat it. So that you have to store the stuff in a bear box or in a vehicle or in a container. You have to, or like a vehicle. That is these things have to be put away. If they're out, that is an open invitation for them to visit and spread your food evenly all over camp. So not good. Not good at all. And with that, let's talk about wildlife awareness. You are in their home. That is super important that your scouts understand that you're visiting somebody else's home. Okay? Don't mess with it. Leave no trace. That's important. Don't approach animals. You're in their home. Okay? These are things, you can take pictures of the raccoon, but don't approach them. Don't try to feed them. I've seen that. You've seen that. So we need to teach our young people to respect the animals that live in the woods. We need to respect their habitat. But that is super critical to the whole thing of camping, is understanding that they live there full time and they are looking for the easiest path to get food. So it happens, and that's nature. That is the way nature works, and giving our young people those opportunities to experience it is very valuable. We need to make sure that they have those experiences and understand the whole cycle of life and how that all works. That is critical, especially today when we're all computery and we're all absorbed by our phones. That's very important to keep in mind. Hey, before we go any further, I want to make sure that you are invited to come to the live meeting. The live meeting is on the first Sunday of each month at 9 p.m. Eastern Time. So please join us. Now, you're going to have to adjust for whatever time zone you're in, but please join us and join in. That's a great way to ask questions, and I'm there to answer them. Also, I want to personally thank all of the patrons on Patreon for their continued financial support. Also, if you would like to become a channel member right here on YouTube, hit the join button and go through that process. It's a great way to help fund what you see here. If you don't want to do a monthly donation, that's fine. We have a thank you button. Just hit the thank you button and make a one-time donation. That is always appreciated. And let's get right back to it. Hydration and nutrition. These are critical to having a good time out at camp. When you're camping, It's fun. All the youth are out there running around, and they completely forget about drinking water. It is amazing. I've been on week-long campings, and about the second day, they're sick because they have a headache, and they're having all the classic signs of dehydration. You get about 2 pints of water in them, they're great. They feel much better. And all of a sudden, everything's great. And then they forget again. It is, it is a roller coaster. It is so important that we have water, not soda, not hot cocoa, not coffee liters, but water. Water is what your body desires. It's what it needs. You have to drink water. Okay? All the other liquids, they don't compare. So make sure that your scouts are drinking enough water. Also, if they're running around, they're running through a lot of their natural, they're sweating. That sweat is full of salt. So they're going to have some additional problems. So if it's hot out, if it's dry out, if it's super dry, like you're on a Klondike Derby and it's super dry, all the snow squeaks when you step out. I mean, it's really dry. Even though you're sitting in a bunch of ice, that could actually tank your dehydration too. So even though you're out in the cold, so you got to keep all that in mind. If you're in the desert, if you're out west and you're in a desert environment, obviously you're going to need more water. Water. That is the number one question. When I was Nurse Betty at camp, and they would come up saying they had a headache, I would say, okay, how much water have you had? Well, I've had some Kool-Aid and I've had soda at the trading post, and none of that counts. Okay, how much water? Well, I took a sip out of the water fountain. No wonder you're sick. You're not totally sick. You're not ill. You're thirsty. So go drink some water. It's crazy. Now, usually when you go camping, you're only going for a brief amount of time, and first aid is a concern. All scouts and scouters should have their own first aid kit, their own little package, and it will have moleskin in it, and it will have a Band-Aid in there. It will have the basics, okay? So if you're camping like a weekend, that little first aid kit is what you use for yourself, okay? That is your first aid kit. Every troop and every pack should have medical supplies like bandages and Band-Aids and all the basic stuff you might think you need in a kit. Hopefully, I'm working with some people on it, but I'm hopefully going to have a video that I will put up there. Nothing there now, but in the future I'll put it there, on what you should have in your group or your unit's first aid kit. So that's an important thing. But the unit will have one, and your Nurse Betty or your medical officer that's going along with the unit, they will be able to do more serious things. So if you have a scraped knee and in your little first aid kit you don't have a bandage that big, you're going to go to your first aid person in your unit, and they will have the unit's first aid equipment, okay, so that they can put a Band-Aid or something on the wound. So, but anything serious, of course, you're going to have medical assistance. We're going to have to do first aid because that's what it is, and then move them on to professionals. So that would be the more dangerous stuff, broken arms, things like that. But as far as stuff at camp, most of the time, if it's a weekend, you got your own little first aid kit. You should have one. Every scouter and every scout should have one, and that way you have ample amount of materials around. Be careful. There are some issues, and your first aid equipment and your first aid officer, your medical officer of your unit, should know about special cases, such as a food allergy or a bug allergy or something. Okay, it could be serious. So you have to keep all that safety and first aid and emergency type of things in mind when you're camping. Weather preparedness. In Florida, we get hurricanes. In the mid United States, they get tornadoes. Okay, which they're both destructive, but there's a big difference. Hurricanes take days to get to you, okay? Where a tornado happens and it's gone. I mean, it's fast. So you have to know your weather environment and have those plans in place if you need to seek shelter. So that's important. Typically with hurricanes, I know this to be a fact, a lot of times we know it's coming. We know that it has a percentage of coming our way, and they're huge. Hurricanes are gigantic. They're bigger than several states. They're gigantic. Okay, when they come towards you, it's going to be very rainy, very windy. The rain goes sideways. It's amazing when you've gone through as many hurricanes as I have. That is in. You don't want to be camping in that kind of. You want to be in a structure. You want to be in, not in a tent, but in an actual structure. So keep in mind the weather. Find out what's going on in your area. Out west, we have forest fires out there. So, that could be a real problem. They could be evacuating for other issues. There's flash floods that could happen. There's a lot of different weather that you need to be aware of before you just head out. Weathermen try real hard, okay? Weathermen and weatherwomen, they do really good work. That meteorology stuff is great, but they're not always right. And it's better to be on the safe side than on the bad side of a hurricane. So, take those precautions. Be prepared. The buddy system. We need to always have that. Wherever you go on an adventure, going camping, going anywhere, you need to have a buddy system. Now, typically, if you're in Scouts BSA and you're in a troop, you'll be in a tent, and there's two in that tent. And those are your buddies, okay? And they're within that age group according to youth protection training. So that way you have a safe group that can travel around and watch after each other. On the other hand, you have adults, and the adults need to have a buddy system too. You've heard this, 2 deep leadership. That is the buddy system, okay, for adults. We need 2 adult leaders. Now, they don't have to be in the same tent, but if you're going to go and check in on a patrol, you need to take your buddy, okay? And that way you stay within youth protection training, the YPT. You gotta stay 2 deep leadership. Very important. That's the thing about the buddy system. Make sure you talk to the new scouts that have never gone camping before, and they understand what the buddy system is. It's not that you have to see each other, okay? And if somebody blows a whistle for buddy check, you got to go over and raise their hand. They have to be within a connection, okay? They have to be able to be seen. So that's super important to understand the buddy system, and teach the young scouts that are just getting into the Cub Scout pack or the troop or the crew. Teach the younger ones that that's still in place, even as they get older, as they become teenagers and so on. It's not exempt. A buddy system should be in play the whole time. The last big point about that overnight camp out or camping situation is that you should keep in mind the principles of leave no trace. So important. We don't want scouts, a pack, a troop, a crew to leave their campsite and have trash everywhere. That would be terrible. Terrible. So always make sure you do a line and you police the area. You sweep it back and forth to make sure that every bit of trash that you left is put in a trash bag and disposed of properly. So that is important. Camping can be a messy affair, The biggest offender I find is little juice boxes. With Cub Scouts, you can't avoid them. The little juice box with that little straw, and you stick it in there. Guess what? That little sleeve that it came out of always ends up in the wind, and you find them. So that you have to police. You have to go through it back and forth and just check every bit of trash. Make sure that you keep all of the leave no trace principles in line. Okay? Super important to think about. You can take photographs and leave footprints. That's it. Okay? Everything else, it's like leave no trace. That way it's nice for the next camper. You want to make sure that camper doesn't go down to the camp office and say, I got into camp and it was trash. It was piled up high in the trash can. There was trash all over the ground. They were burning cans in the fire. They were doing this, they were doing that. We don't need that. Not Scouts. We need to live by those ethics that we teach, right? So let's keep things, leave no trace. We need to keep that. And that, I know you do, but make sure that your new people know about it too. So definitely, or they might need a reminder. That's another thing. It does happen. So I've had to be reminded, so I'm not perfect. And, that's one of those things. But, the thing that is wonderful about all of this is we're giving opportunities to young people to really achieve, to do exciting things and to have adventures. Learn patrol method, learn how to cook properly. That's great. They're learning how to keep that buddy system, how to stay safe. These are skills for a lot of the Scouts BSA. For a lot of the troops, these are direct skills. Build a fire. Put out that fire. Those are skills. And people should learn them. And camping gives them those opportunities. Be safe. Use all of these pointers just to kind of go over that. And I appreciate all that you do in scouting. And youth too. I appreciate you looking at this and understanding that even the grown-ups need to be told sometimes, right? So we need to be that example. We need to be the example and not the exception, right? Yeah. So let's do that. Let's train America's future leaders to be the best they can be and have the best time doing it. I'm thankful for your involvement. Thank you so much for tuning in. And if you get a chance, I've got a video over here about Scout mode on your phone. It's on every phone. Till then, I'll see you on the trail.